Burning, he had thought he was done being angry with Olivia, but in this moment it came back full force. He was angry that she had kept Caleb from him, angry that she had waited until she was dying to tell him the truth, angry that after all these years she was still the one. Leaving Olivia turned her head slightly, her gaze finding Daniel's. He saw the apology in her eyes. Before she even spoke, "Promise me," she whispered, "promise me you'll take care of him." His breath caught. He should have resented the request, should have felt the weight of it like a chain being wrapped around him, but there was no hesitation when he answered, "I will." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I regret everything," she whispered, "leaving, lying, keeping him from you. I thought I was doing what was best, but I was wrong. I was so wrong." Daniel leaned closer, taking her frail hand in his own, gripping it tighter than he should have, as if he could somehow anchor her here. "I hated you," he admitted, his voice rough, raw. "For so long I hated you." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "I know." His grip on her hand tightened. "But I never stopped loving you." Her breath hitched, her fingers squeezing his as best as they could. "I loved you too," she whispered, her voice barely there now. "Even when I was too much of a coward to stay." The beeping of the monitor slowed the rhythm, shifting. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven movements, each breath a struggle. Caleb let out another sob, gripping her arm, shaking his head, whispering, "Please, please don't go." Olivia turned her head, looking at their son. "One last time, I love you," she breathed, and then the breath she had just taken didn't come back. The room fell silent. Caleb leaped out, a broken sound, burying his face in the blankets, his small body trembling with the weight of a grief too big for him. Daniel sat frozen, his hands still wrapped around Olivis, unable to let go, unwilling to accept that she was gone. But she was, and no amount of money, no amount of power could change that. The doctor came in a few moments later, but Daniel barely registered his words. He barely noticed, and the monitors were turned off when the machines were disconnected. When Olivia's hand finally went still in his, all he knew was that the woman he had once loved, the woman who had broken him and then returned just to shatter him all over again, was gone. And their son, his son, had just lost the most important person in his life. Daniel forced himself to move, to do the one thing he knew Olivia had wanted him to do. He turned to Caleb, who was curled up in the chair, his face buried in his hands. Daniel crouched beside him, hesitated, then reached out, pulling him into his arms. Caleb didn't fight it. He let himself be held, let himself break, sobbing into Daniel's chest as Daniel held him close, his own throat tight with emotion. "I got you," Daniel murmured, his voice steady despite everything breaking inside him. "You're not alone." Caleb's little fingers clenched into Daniel's shirt, his entire body trembling. "I don't want her to be gone," he whispered, his voice so small, so broken. Daniel closed his eyes, pressing his cheek against the top of Caleb's head. "I know," he said quietly, "I know." The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders then, not as a burden but as a purpose. He had lost Olivia once before, and now he had lost her again, but Caleb was still here, and no matter what happened, Daniel wasn't going to fail him. This was his son, and Daniel would spend the rest of his life proving that he would never ever leave him. The house was too quiet for the past 3 days. The air had been thick with silence, the kind that pressed down on everything like a heavy, suffocating weight. Olivia's funeral had come and gone, a blur of condolences, distant relatives, and a casket lowered into the earth. Caleb had barely spoken the entire time, his small face unreadable, his fingers clutching onto the sleeve of Daniel's jacket as if it was the only thing keeping him upright. And then when they returned home, he had shut himself in his room and refused to come out. Daniel had given him space, at first understanding that the boy needed time, but now as he stood outside Caleb's door, hearing nothing but silence from the other side, he wondered if he had made a mistake. He had spent so many years controlling every aspect of his life, but this fatherhood grief loss was something he didn't know how to navigate. He wasn't sure if he was doing it right. All he knew was that Caleb was hurting, and he didn't know how to fix it. The sound of footsteps behind him made him turn. Gerald, his longtime butler, held out a small envelope, his expression unreadable. "This was left with her things," he said quietly. "She wrote for Caleb." Daniel took the envelope, his fingers tightening around the paper. As he read Olivia's handwriting, the weight of it settled deep in his chest. He nodded in silent thanks before turning back to the door, hesitating for only a second before knocking. "No response." "Caleb," Daniel said, his voice steady, "I have something for you." "Still nothing?" Daniel exhaled, pressing his palm against the door. I know you're mad, I know you miss her, and I know that no matter what I say it won't make it better, but she left something for you." He paused. "Will you at least let me give it to you?" There was a long silence, then finally the soft sound of footsteps.